Well, good morning, Downsview. Glad to begin our day together again. I'm ending my day speaking with you out here on our balcony. It's chilly tonight, but the changing of the seasons is something that just continues to go forward. I love the evenings for many reasons, but at the end of the day, there's something relaxing about it, just like there's something exciting about the beginning of a morning like this as we start it together. I have been watching some little more interesting television shows than usual during this time, and kind of scrolling around the dial every once in a while. I've come upon this, I think it's called BBC Earth, British Broadcasting Corporation, I suppose. It's a nature show, essentially. And they've got all kinds of interesting documentaries or documentaries of different kinds that, they really do have interesting things have to say about our world. I was noticing earlier tonight that there's in some parts of the Sahara Desert in Africa, sort of on the edges there, how the different animals will cooperate with each other in ways that, from our vantage point, we first look in and say, boy, that's odd to see it, but you can see how there's this mutual dependence on each other. There was this little tiny bird of some kind who, on one hand, noticed that it would fly up to other animals. They had an example of a giraffe, and this giraffe would let the bird not only land on him, but climb up its entire body. And it was just kind of pecking away at it, but you realize what it was doing, what it was actually eating. The ticks and the fleas and different little flies and such, which would be an annoyance to the giraffe, and it was getting its meal that way. And you go, okay, well, that's kind of cool. But the mutual dependence actually got so far up that this, up the chain, was that this bird would actually crawl all the way up to the head, in the ears, even around the nose, and right up inside the mouth, clinging onto the cheek or the chin of the giraffe, and sort of perched in there, and it was sticking its beak right inside the giraffe's mouth to actually eat some of the food that was there. Well, of course, what he was doing was being like a dentist to this, this giraffe, and I thought, boy, the giraffe puts up with this annoyance, because it can't be really pleasant having this bird hanging from your chin. But he did it because he realized the good that the bird was doing. And even though it was a bit annoying, and in some ways probably not the giraffe's first choice, it was something good for the giraffe, and the giraffe realized that. And of course, I'm always looking for sermon analogies, and I thought, yeah, if we would be given eyes to see, ears to hear, frankly, hearts to understand, and wills to submit, that we would see the good that God is doing through the challenges we're undergoing, we'd accept them a little more easily, just like the animal kingdom does, wouldn't we? It's interesting because a few minutes later they showed the same little bird that what it would do would actually land on a group of hippos in the river. But in that case, the hippos actually have little scars or little cuts on their bodies, and these birds just love this little flow of blood, and it's very nutritious. And as long as the bird would hang in there, the blood would continue to flow. And the hippos didn't much like this, and they'd shake their heads and swish their tails and try to spray water, and this little bird would just keep at it, because as difficult as it was for the bird to get what was good for him, because it was good for him, he kept at it. And I thought, boy, there's just a biblical teaching principle in both cases, isn't there? If we'd keep at persevering at the things that might be difficult but are good for us, if we know they're good for us, we'll keep at it. If, like on the giraffe itself knows that this little annoyance is good for it, it's gonna put up with it, isn't it? I was reading in the book of Hebrews tonight, and again, I'm shining on the light here. Right at the end of the book of Hebrews in chapter 13, There's a beautiful benediction that we often use to close our services, but listen what the promise is about what God's doing. Now, may the God of peace, who brought up the great shepherd from the sheep, the Lord Jesus, by the blood of the eternal covenant, equip you with everything good that you may do his will, working in us that which is pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. That God is at work with things that are pleasing in his sight, which means the viewpoint of God is what I've got to get on line with. The perspective of God, the way that God sees it, what the promises of God are bringing to fruition. If I would do that, then even as we are being called to exercise some real patience, aren't we, these days? Here we are in week 7? I'm losing track. That's part of the reason we need patience, right? We lose track of all of this. I'm starting to see some of the news reports down in the U.S., how many, just thousands upon thousands of people furious that they're having to put up with this. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to be patient. We shouldn't have any restrictions or whatever it might be. And however you feel about all of that, friends, the patience that God calls us to in these days is just going to really be helped when we recognize the good that God is up to. And that good really is defined as what's pleasing in God's sight. Because those who live for the pleasure of God are those who are doing the things and finding their path to the very best things for themselves. Friends, Downsview, I know you know these things, but it's good, as the book of Philippians says, to stir up your pure minds by way of remembrance, so that the things that we already know, we are actually encouraged in, especially during times like this that are in themselves particularly encouraging. So I want to encourage you again. It's Wednesday morning now when you'll be watching this, to come back tonight at 7 o'clock for our Facebook Live, our congregational connection, one of the opportunities that we have during the week to do that. 7 o'clock tonight, just go to my Facebook profile, and you'll find the Facebook Live there. We meet for an hour, and we're going to be continuing in our study of Job's working towards being more patient and persevering in the midst of his horrendous trials, but the good that God was doing in excising the pride out of Job's life. You'll find the outline for that at the bottom of this video as well, and you can download that. I think it's in a Google Doc, and you'll be able to see that, or you should be able to pick it up tonight during the Facebook Live itself. I'll try to post it there as well. Again, thank you. We got a number of donations in this week. Your offerings have started to come in. We're almost there with our e-transfer system. It looks like it's just being tested out by some of our finance people, and so you can look for some letters in the mail in the next week or so, and we'll outline the specifics that you're able to give by just dropping off your cash, not cash, but checks. Don't bring cash by, but dropping off your checks to the church, mailing them into the church, or actually doing this e-transfer fund. We're almost 2 months that we haven't had a regular offering at the church. Obviously, that's going to make a difference even for a church our size. So thank you for already thinking of that without us really even prompting you to do that. Again, God's at work. God is reigning in this world. It's a chilly, windy night out here, but I already can see how God is blowing the clouds out of the portion of the sky that I saw them there earlier, and just reminds me that God's always at work, even in the midst of things, and particularly even when I'm not even recognizing or noticing it. So be encouraged, friends. The Lord be with you. Cheers.